Ever looked at a necktie and thought this could make an amazing quilt? Today, I'm taking ordinary men's neckties and turning them into something extraordinary with the help of my AccuQuilt Go Me cutter and the 9-inch cube dies. Stay tuned to see how these ties get a second chance at life as part of a quilt block that redefines repurposing. Hi, my name is Tammy. I'm a human being, and like you, I have a stash of neckties that I keep saying to myself, one day I'm going to do something with those ties. Well, today is that day, my quilty friend. My first step was to decide which quilt block I wanted to make. So I chose the Sawtooth Star block. Once I selected the block, I selected 3 ties I felt would play well together in that block. Now let me show you how I did it. Once you've selected the ties that you want to use in your project, the next step is to make sure that you wash them so that they're clean for your project. I recommend using a detergent that is for delicate fabrics such as Dreft or Woolite or something like that. I also recommend that you do not directly throw your ties into the washer, because what will happen is when they come out, they'll be a complete hot mess because A, you're not supposed to be putting them in the washer machine. You're supposed to dry clean most of them. And B, what happens is the stabilizer that is in the ties that are used to give the ties the structure, which we're going to cut out in the next step, it becomes all crinkled up and then your tie is crinkly unnecessarily. I do like crinkle fabric, but I do not like crinkled tie fabric. So let me show you how I accomplish this mission. I use just a basic lingerie bag or a bag that you put your delicates in. And I simply take the bag, put the ties in as such, stuff them all in, zip it up, and then go to the washer. We are in my laundry room, and please disregard the sound of the fan. I don't have a way to turn it off for the purpose of this video. So since I know the source of the ties I'm using, I know that those ties were properly cared for, they went to the cleaners, etc. So I don't have to worry about like how dirty they are or how long I need to have them in the washer to get them clean. So I am going to use my quick wash cycle. I'm just using whatever random Samsung brand washer machine. And I'm going to change the temperature to eco warm. And eco warm for me is just the temperature of the pipes when the water comes out of the pipes. And I'm in Los Angeles, California right now. I don't know, it's been like overnight, it was like, I don't know, 50 degrees. So it's probably going to be cold water for the most part, but just be mindful of that. Don't use warm or hot water because you're not supposed to be washing ties in the first place. So let's be gentle with them. As far as the spin cycle, I don't know. I always just leave it on high. I guess it kind of does matter. You can put it, actually, let's try this. I'm going to put it on, low spin to see how it turns out. And then as far as the soil level, it's just light. So let me show you what I do next. I just basically, lift it up. It's pretty simple. And I've already preloaded my detergent, which is the Woolite for delicates, in my detergent drawer here. I'm throwing in the laundry bag with the ties, and I'll show you what it looks like at the end. I had an idea. Let me do this experiment where I put some of the ties in this lingerie bag and then also place these 2 dies just in the washer loose, because I wanted to see if it really did make a difference to use the lingerie bag or not. So let me show you how everything turned out. These are the 2 dies that were washed in the washer machine outside of the lingerie bag and also dried in the dryer without the lingerie bag. And as you can kind of see here, it's crinkly as far as the stabilizer that's in the tie. It's wrinkled. So that's what these look like. Now, let's open up the lingerie bag and see how those ties came out. So the ties that are in the lingerie bag are less wrinkled. However, they are damp. the ones that were just in the dryer without the lingerie bag, they are 100% dry, but these are damp. This one is extra wrinkled, and I wonder if it's because of the fabric and the stabilizer that was used inside the tie, or could it be that since this one was like wrapped within the other ties, did it just get wrinkled because it was stuck in the other dies? I'm not sure. I don't think there's a way to find out. But this is how everything turned out. Again, this is the crinklier one. And these came out okay, not so bad. And this one, not so bad. And this one, not so bad. The ties are now completely dried. I forgot to mention that the setting for the temperature on the dryer was high. So I don't think that that impacted the shrinkage at all. I mean, I don't really have a way to test it, but I'm not sure. Let me flip the ties over, and the anatomy of a tie is such that most ties have some sort of labeling on the back side. And then these two ties have a loop here, which you would place the thinner part of the tie into when the tie is properly placed on the neck of the person that's wearing it. So in order to start the deconstruction process, these ties have a knot here that needs to be removed with the seam ripper. So I'm going to do that now. And you just seam rip it open. Once you do that, you'll notice that there are thinner threads, and sometimes it just opens up. But then what I've noticed is that with some of the ties, that inner thread, what I noticed with some of the threads, see, here's that thread. So you can either rip it here, or I take the seam ripper, I go in there and just rip it open as such, and then rip it the rest of the way. So I am going to do that process, and then once that's done, I'll bring you back to see what the finished result looks like. This is what the 3 ties look like once the seams have been opened. I started the process using a traditional seam ripper, and what I found was that was taking too long. So I essentially ran my finger up the center of the seam, and then once I had enough thread, I just cut it with my snips, and that made the process go a lot faster. So here is that stabilizer part of the tie, and all I'm simply doing is just pulling it out of the little pocket there and pulling it forward and just essentially removing it. So what I'm gonna do is I will keep this stabilizer because I have another project that I'm going to do that will use this stabilizer. I'm also going to keep the labels from the ties. I know that some of you collect the labels. This is the beginning of my journey of making tie quilts. So I definitely will collect the labels and see what inspiration I have in the future for a project. If you have used labels in a project, a quilting project, please comment down below and tell us all how you use those ties. And also, if you've used the stabilizer piece from the tie in a project, let me know down in the comment below as well, because it may inspire me to either make that project or maybe attempt to do a video on it. So the next step I'm going to show you is how I apply the stabilizer to the back of this material so that I can prepare for cutting in my AccuQuilt cutter. Stay tuned. The next step that needs to happen before these ties are ready to be cut with the AccuQuilt cutting system is I need to fuse the stabilizer on the back of these ties. So what I've done here is I went ahead and continued to remove all the extra pieces of the tie to completely deconstruct it. At the base of the tie, remember that little pocket that was right there? I used my rotary cutter to remove that pocket and kind of squared this up a little bit. Well, it's not squared up, but just shaped it up. And then what I did with all 3 is I was trying to figure out, okay, what part of the tie am I going to use that gives me the maximum coverage for my AccuQuilt die? I'll be using the 9-inch mix and match Q system to cut out the block. And so I just decided to cut here at this seam. All 3 ties have this first join of a seam here. So I just cut that and then cleaned it up. Again, same thing here. I just cut it here and cleaned it up. What I've done here is I have cut the woven fuse, which is the product that I'm using. It's a lightweight one-side adhesive stabilizer. I've cut it to probably maybe, I don't know, 1/2 inch or inch smaller than my tie. You can use whatever lightweight one-side adhesive stabilizer you choose. I'm also going to use the Nifty Notions Teflon pressing sheet to make sure that this stabilizer does not stick to my iron. I'm also using my wool pressing mat. So here is how it all works. At first, when I used this Teflon pressing mat, I was like, oh my stars, something's gonna melt. But as you can see here, or you'll see in a moment, it doesn't melt. It just protects your iron so that the adhesive does not stick to your iron as you're pressing. The trick with the Teflon pressing sheet is to make sure that it cools down after you're finished pressing, because it's really hot, and I noticed that when I try to remove it when it's really hot, it gives me more static than I want to experience. So as you can see here, I just lifted off the Teflon sheet and there was a little sticking here, but that's why you use it, so that that sticking does not happen on your iron. So this is the hand of the tie once it has been stabilized. And now what you can see is it's pretty stable. And then this is part of the tie that has not been stabilized. I'll go ahead after I'm done with this and stabilize the rest of this tie as well as the other two colors. But I just wanted to show you the difference between this part, which hasn't been stabilized, and this part, which is stabilized. I did adhere the stabilizer to the wrong side of the tie. This is the right side of the tie, and this is the side that I will be using for my quilt block. I will be making the sawtooth star block, and I'm going to use my 9-inch mix and match Go Cube set to make the block. I'll also be using my Go Me. There are 4 dies that are required to cut the sawtooth star block. The first shape is shape number 1. Again, this is from the 9-inch mix and match cube set, and shape number 1 is a square. Shape number 2, which is another square but a smaller square, again from the 9-inch mix and match set, Go Cube set. Shape number 4, which is the quarter square triangle, and the 4th die is shape number 5, which are half square triangles. The reason why I decided to use the 9-inch mix and match Go Cube set is because when you add the stabilizer to the back of the tie, it gives the tie extra structure and stability, which is kind of what I want. But in that extra structure and stability, once you seam or piece together the seams, you have added bulk. So the larger the finished size of the block, the further away or the further distributed the bulk is, and so it'll make it easier to use that block in a project. These are all the pieces that were cut out using the AccuQuilt Go Me cutter and the 4 dies from the 9-inch Go Cube mix and match set. This is what's left over from that blue tie. There's some scrap here. And as you can see, there's still quite a bit of fabric left over that I can use for additional blocks or an additional project. And with this blue tie, I cut out shape number 1, which is the large square. I cut out 4 of the shape number 2, which is the smaller square. And from the red, here is a piece of scrap left over. And I have this much of the tie left, so it's a lot of the tie left. And pretty much what I used was that top narrow end of the tie. And I cut out 4 of the shape number 4, which is the triangle that will be used to make the flying geese unit. This is what's left over from the gold tie and Still have quite a bit of fabric left. And I cut out 8 pieces of shape number 5. So what I'll do next is take the 4 pieces from die number 4 and the 8 pieces from die number 5 and make 4 flying geese units. And then I have the corner pieces here, 4 corners, which is the blue, and the center piece, which is shape number 1. So I'm going to piece all those together and then show you the finished block. Ta-da! I did it. I completed the sawtooth star block. I used 3 different ties. I washed the ties. I filleted them open. I stabilized them. I used my Go Me and my 9-inch mix and match Go Cube set to cut the shapes for this sawtooth star block. Let me show you the back. For the majority of the seams, I pressed them open, and the reason why I did that is I typically do that for most of my blocks. But for this one, I wanted to sort of distribute the weight of the bulk of the seam so that I wouldn't have as much awkwardness when I was sewing. The center seam here and here, I just pressed those toward the center of this square. I have some tips for success. Depending on what type of project you'll be using your ties for, if you're using, or if you're going to make like a quilt or a large bed runner or something like that, I would recommend using either the Go Cube 8 or 9-inch, because the 8 or 9-inch will fit through the Go Me for those of you who have the Go Me, and also fit through the Go and the Go Big. If you decide to use the 10 or the 12-inch cube sets, those only work with the Go cutter and the Go Big cutter. So the reason why you would use a larger cube size is because when you stabilize the ties, you're adding sort of extra weight and bulk to the project. So imagine this is one 9-inch block, and if I were making a project, it would be more blocks and it would be heavy. So you would just have to consider that. I am going to make a little itty bitty, well, I was thinking of making a 4-inch, but maybe I'll do a 6-inch block and then see how that works out. So I'll update you guys on that process as well. The other tip for success I have is to make sure that you press your seams open as much as possible, and to absolutely use a clapper, because this fusible will sort of give you a nice crease. It makes it look so beautiful when you press your seams open and use a clapper. Look how good those points are. And the last thing I would say is, again, to keep in mind the project that you'll be using, because if you are going to quilt this and add batting and backing, you have to consider the weight of those products that you'll be using, because it just makes your project heavier. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and give it a like, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.